What do you get when you combine simplified practice marketing, proven ROI strategy, and Van skate shoes? You get Mark Thackeray, of course. So lace up, grab your green smoothie, and get ready, because this is Dental Marketing Secrets. And this is Mark.
All right, you guys, welcome back to another episode of the Dental Marketing Secrets podcast, where this podcast is dedicated to providing you tips and tricks and techniques that you can take and apply immediately to grow your practice so that ultimately you can serve more patients and leave a greater impact, because that is the name of the game, my friends. My name is Mark Thackeray. Mike Thackeray. I'm changing my name on the spot. Mark Thackeray. I'm always honored to be here with you this morning, wherever you're listening. It's great to have you on the show. I've got a friend back on the show, Cory Pinegar, who's been in here on the show before with CallForce. He's the CEO of CallForce, and they are a dental solutions company. If you haven't heard of CallForce, you definitely need to check them out. But they're a dental solutions company that is dedicated to helping dentists succeed in their practices by helping them improve their overdue hygiene recall. And that's really one of the main reasons, Cory, why you're on the show today is to talk about this. But first of all, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on. Thank
you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. And this is just such a perfect timing right now, because we have everything that's been going on with COVID. And really this is the point where it's really starting to show in a lot of practices. So my question to you, Cory, right off the bat is what are you seeing from practices right now? I know you work with a ton of different offices across the country. What are they saying right now in terms of hygiene and overdue hygiene? What are they seeing?
Yeah, I can speak to overdue hygiene, and I can also speak to just overall production. We're seeing about a 10 to a 15% drop in overall production in October and November right now. And so, and in some practices, you're seeing up to 30 to 35%. Certain dentists are taking a day or two off or taking a vacation now. But overall, you're seeing about a 10 to 15% drop.
Wow. And has a massive effect on the practice. You take a 10 to 15% cut, that's a big deal.
Yep. And the really important thing to realize here too is that this gap came from Corona. So to really go back to why this even happened is COVID happened because of mandates, offices closed, and hygiene appointments did not happen.
Right.
And what that caused is then there was no reappointment 6 months down the line, i.e. that is why hygiene production is so low for October and November. Now, what's important about dealing with this dip right here is that if we don't correct it now, if we don't get people back on the books, we will see a smaller version of this again 6 months down the line.
Right.
And so it's really crucial that we just don't say, hey, I'm going to take some time off. It's okay. September, August were really good, because I don't think you want to continue to pay. Let's say it's 10% now, a 5 to 7% dip 6 months down the line again, and then a 3 to 5% dip 6 months down the line again. We want to isolate the issue. We know what it is, and we know how to take care of it. And then we're not going to pay the price for a long time.
So you're saying we can't just run and hide from this, and it's going to eventually work itself out?
You could. You totally could.
Because that sounds pretty good to me right now.
Yeah, I agree there too.
No, but that is really the long-term viewpoint that you need to take. You need to take with this is that, hey, we got to fix this now so that it's not a recurring dip every 6 months. So let's dive into that, Cory. I know you guys specialize on the phones, and so my first question, when I talk to practices and, we're discussing phones, because it is a very integral part of your practice, and I get a lot of people that really kind of shy away from this. They see, they see how popular some of these messaging apps are, that offices are texting a lot now. They're using Facebook Messenger. Instagram has Messenger now, and different things, and they actually cross communicate now. So what is your response to a practice that's like, well, yeah, I know phones are still we still need a phone, but I think they're kind of. Let me ask you this question: Do you feel like they are underestimating the value of the phone in their in their practice.
Yeah, I mean, I think certain practices are. The important thing to do is really, we need to go back to a study by Fortune magazine here, and it talks about preferred forms of communication for patients. And what it does is it says 30% of patients prefer a text message. Or no, sorry, let me correct myself. 40% of patients prefer a text message. 30% of patients prefer an email reminder, email follow-up, and 30% prefer a phone call. And what we learned from this is that every single person has a different preferred form of communication with healthcare or their medical practice.
Right.
For me, I actually prefer a phone call.
Yeah.
And I probably fall into the millennial age group, but there's something for me about dentistry and healthcare that's personal. It's not just a generic tea time at a golf course
Right.
or a reservation for dinner at a pizza joint, but it is the taking care of my teeth and it's the taking care of my body. And so for me, the dentist that I go to, I want to go to for the next 20 years. And when they call to remind me and when they send me those postcards and emails and text messages, I feel that they actually care. And so to say, oh, we're going to place all of our bets on text message and email is great, but you're only going to be communicating with 70% of people in their preferred form.
Right.
The second thing to realize is that when people have emergencies, they want to take care of it now. You don't send an email in the hopes that in the next 2 minutes you're going to be scheduled.
Right. Exactly.
You send an email as okay, when they email me back, we'll get to it. And so in terms of emergencies and urgent care, phones are extremely relevant. Phones are also extremely relevant because they put people in a yes or yes position.
So what do you mean by that?
I can say, hey, Mark, we actually have availability today at 2 p.m. or tomorrow at 10 a.m. When works best for you?
Gotcha.
We're not putting you in the position where we sent you a text and you can make the decision to say yes or no, and you don't even have to respond.
Right.
But when you're on the phone with someone, you're in a conversation that cannot be avoided like a text message thread.
Yeah.
And so, again, it's really important for forms of communication that we work all of these so that we take care of patients the way they want to be taken care of, not the way we think they should be taken care of.
Right. Right. So you're not saying that, hey, you need to cut out text messaging or that, email's the devil or anything like that. It's just another form of communication, and you base it off of the preference of the patient.
Yeah. And when you work a well thought out cadence of interacting with your patients through emails, text messages, and phone calls, that's when you build this really good personal relationship between the practice because you're reaching out in multiple avenues.
Yeah, that's right.
Because you're showing that you actually care.
Yeah.
And so again, in terms of your most effective, cost-effective form of communication, it's probably text messages. But in terms of retention and growth of your practice, you need all three to grow your practice in a smart fashion.
Right. As I think about phone calls and kind of what we're talking about right now, I think of how powerful they can be because you're providing an opportunity for the patient or prospective patient, if they're calling their office for the first time, the chance to ask questions. And I know you can do that in an email. I know you can do that via text message, but it doesn't happen with the frequency that it happens on the phone, where you can just ask the question immediately, which might lead to another question, which might lead to clarification on this issue. Whereas you're not going to see that happen very much with email, and you're not going to see that happen as often with text messaging. And so I feel like you have a real strong opportunity there to allay those fears, if they're fears, or to overcome any objections immediately, and really bridge that, or start bridging that gap, and build that trust with a patient.
Yeah, and what you said is really cool because out of the three forms of communication, to piggyback on what you're saying, phone calls is probably the easiest and best way to actually build a relationship.
Yeah, I would agree there.
You can get to know someone, you can be more comforted. And a lot of people are terrified of the dentist. And though for us every single day, it's what we interact, it's what we do, there's a lot of people who need that comfort that there's a real person who actually cares for them, and that alleviates the fear of coming in.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and especially too for someone who's new to your practice, who might not understand the personality, the persona, I guess, of your practice, because some people in like in text messages, it's easy, and in emails, it's very easy to misinterpret. We do this all the time where we think that someone is being facetious or funny or sarcastic. In reality, they're not, or vice versa, and it can rub people the wrong way. And so I think those are great. And like you said, you've got to use all of them. We're not dissing on any of these or saying you shouldn't, but I think once it's easier to establish that kind of personality up front, and then after you've had that relationship, then via text or via email, that comes across more authentically, I guess, and it's interpreted more accurately.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, which is funny. Okay, well, let's dive into this. So let's talk about the phone then. Yeah, let's talk about, especially, given the context that we're discussing this in, with respect to overdue hygiene and trying to fill that gap. Let's talk about the purpose of a phone then. So break that down for us, Cory. What, in your mind and in your experience, how should we be looking at the phone as a tool for our practice?
Well, we should be looking at a tool of a way of growing our practice, or the phone as a tool for growing our practice. So the real data is, and beyond just filling the gap of COVID, is that practices lose 17% of their patients every year.
Wow.
So if you are 1,000 active patient practice and you add 170 new patients during the year, technically you grew 0%.
Wow.
Now, what's really cool from the data that we've seen is that if you actually have an effective recall and reactivation system, you can get around 9 to 11% churn. And that churn is generally happening because people pass away, people move, people switch insurance carriers, and
right.
then there's things that you can actually change. The things that you can actually change are the people who just haven't seen the dentist in 3 or 4 years. It is the people who had bad experiences, is the people who wanted a different level of care. Those are the patients that we can work with. And the largest majority of that is people like my dad, to single him out for this, who just don't go to the dentist. Like,
right.
Grew up with a father who was a dentist, a grandfather who was a dentist, and then just was mortally terrified of the dentist.
Wow. Yeah.
And so for him, if our doctor calls, he will schedule, but he will never go out of his way to schedule himself. And so that's how we really grow our practice. And right now, this is how we fill the gaps in our schedule. An average practice, I think, has like 450 to 500 households that are overdue.
Wow.
And so if you are able to take the time right now, when there is gaps in your hygiene schedule or gaps in the front desk or time for anyone to call, and you're able to text these patients, email these patients, send postcards to these patients, and call these patients, you will fill those gaps. And you will fill the gaps with patients who need the care,
right,
who also need additional treatment and production done, because most likely they have additional work that's needed because they haven't been in for so long. And then you get them reappointed for 6 months down the line, and you start getting them on a very healthy cycle of great patient care and also great growth for your practice.
Yeah. That's awesome. And so say that again. So you said 400 to 450 households are overdue on average?
Yeah, I mean, 450 to 500 households for a dental practice is the average number that are overdue.
Yeah.
And that could be, a household can be 5 people, it could be 1 person. And so I think the real number is like 750 people.
Yeah.
But we're calling a household at a time. And that's very important to do, because if you can call a household and you can say, hey, Mark, the doctor noticed you overdue. We have Thursday at 2 p.m. We get you scheduled. Hey, Mark, is there anyone else in your house or your household that you would like to get scheduled? And we notice for every 1 patient that we schedule, we're getting an additional third of a patient scheduled. So for every household that we call, we're scheduling 1.3 patients. because we ask the simple question of, is there anyone else in your household that you would like to schedule? And that's a very important thing for making your efforts more effective.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're already putting forth that effort. If you can gain that, that's just, that's an incredible lift right there. That is so cool. So another thing I was thinking about when you were talking about this was just the, when I think about the phone, and we've talked a little bit about this already, but just that it comes back to relationship. I mean, it's another unique opportunity to solidify that relationship you have with a patient. I mean, if you're calling them about, they're overdue and expressing concern, I think that comes across. Well, I think your sincerity can come across more easily via a phone call than a text message or an email, especially an automated email. But if you are literally calling them, to ask and inquire about how they are feeling, like, again, that could be for overdue hygiene, or it could just be for a post-treatment, follow-up, and just say, I've just been thinking about you ever since you came in. I just wanted to double check and make sure you're feeling okay, and just how far that can go. I know it requires time. It's not automated, and we would love everything to be automated, but there's some, you can't automate relationships, unfortunately, very well. And so that came to mind, and I'm sure you guys have had experience with that too, but that was one thing that just came to mind, just that the importance of solidifying that relationship.
Well, when people order something from Amazon, they expect it to be automated because they're ordering their next coffee mug. But when you're about to go into for a root canal and pay also $1,000 and have someone sedate and drill into your mouth, you want to know that there's a real person on the other side of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so automation is great and allows us to run our practices more effectively. But behind it all is the trust that there's a real person who actually cares.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's jump into then, I had this question as we were preparing for this episode. What does it look like? I'm just thinking, if I were to practice, okay, I'm hearing this, what can I do? What does a good, effective, phone call look like from a practice side of things? What can I do to prepare myself, my team, so that when we're making calls that we're really effective, when we're doing this? Because I know that can be the complaint from some people, is that, well, I'm calling, I'm not getting anybody, or it's just not, people aren't responding. So what does that look like? I know you have a ton of experience with this, Cory. So what does a good call look like from a practice point of view?
So, and this is just my personal thoughts. I believe a call actually breaks down into 4 categories. Okay. And you need to break through each category to have a successful call. Number 1, your greeting and first impression is very important. If your tone of voice, if you're not friendly, if you're not helpful, if you do not introduce the practice, you're already on a bad foot.
Yes.
Number 1. And that's very simple.
Right.
Number 2 is where you get into more of the meat and potatoes. It's uncovering and building a relationship. Why are they calling today? And how can I make them feel comfortable that we are the right source for solving that problem?
Yes. Well,
so you're not selling anything in this part here.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you are understanding and helping them understand what the practice does. Next is integrity selling. Because we do have to acknowledge that we are selling people because they have choices. And we are not selling them just to make money, but we are selling them that we are the best option, that we offer the highest level of patient care. And we're also selling them where we have availability tomorrow or the next day, or, okay, yes, we're booked today, but we could squeeze you in tomorrow at 7:30 a.m.
Right.
And so integrity selling is next. And finally, we need to convert them and reassure them that they made the right choice and reassure them of the appointment.
I love that. Well, and I'm just taking notes here. But I love, each one of those is so critical. I mean, you talked about the first one. I think a lot of people understand that, but the practice of doing that isn't always as automatic as we sometimes think. I mean, there's so many things that are going on during the day. It can get stressful. The increasing to-dos on your task list are never ending, and if maybe you had a challenging patient just a moments before, and now you're tasked with answering the phone, and instead of putting a smile on the face and just answering with confidence and care, it's like, hey, what can I do? I mean, and like you said, I mean, that's really sets the tone for the practice, and for the experience for that particular patient, because some of them, if it's an existing patient, they might overlook that. They will overlook that more easily than if it's a prospective patient who's never called your office before. But it's amazing how that one little detail can really set the stage for the perception of a patient. And then I loved what you said on the second one too, where you're not trying to sell, but you are just literally asking questions. And I love that question you brought up. What made you call today? And just really getting to the root of what they're calling for, instead of kind of going right into your routine of, hey, well, let me get your name and all this stuff. You're addressing their most pressing need, and you're validating why they're calling.
And you're listening.
Yeah.
Usually it's, hey, when do you want to get scheduled? The most important tip I could even offer on this is mentally, you have to walk yourself through each section on the phone call. Did I give them a great greeting and first impression? Check. Okay, now let me uncover and build that relationship. Do I feel I've done that? Check, then move on. Don't think of this as one continuous flow, but do one and then move to the next one. And you'll notice that you actually have a healthy, better call where the patient reacts better, instead of just, oh, they said schedule. Okay, let me bring up the schedule and throw them on there.
Right.
You'll get higher show rates. You'll get better patient retention. Your patients will refer more. And so following this is just not about converting more patients. But again, as you have said, it is the first experience, and it's key for many aspects of the practice.
Well, and it's reaffirming that relationship too. We talked about that in respect to a prospective patient, their first time experience with your office, but also just existing patients. I mean, we have so many options today as consumers. And especially in the dental industry, we all know this. There's a dentist on every corner. We hear that all the time. And so that, any of these things that cause friction in that relationship are opportunities for the patient to look elsewhere, quite frankly. And so if we can eradicate those and smooth out that pathway for them, remove that friction, and make it, again, just kind of reassure that relationship each time that we connect with them. That is critical, because every connection point either builds trust or repels trust, and so if you look at it that way, it really, for me, it puts things in a perspective of, okay, every interaction I have to be totally in tune with what the needs of that particular patient are. I can't let anything else that's going on right now affect me in that moment.
I couldn't agree more. I like what you said also, that there's no such move as something that just stays stagnant, but either you're building a patient experience or you're building a negative patient experience.
Yeah.
And it may be minor each way. It may be a minor move each way, but again, there's nothing where you're just staying steady if you are having an interaction.
Right. And that just can't happen. So, and then one thing I wanted to ask you a little bit more about too is that third step where you mentioned the integrity sell. So sell, that's a tricky word, that a lot of people can't wrap their heads around, because they feel like, well, I don't want to be and I hate to use this term, but like the used car salesman, and I know there's a lot of good used car salesmen out there, but I mean, that's the perception that some people, identify with when they're asked to sell anything. So how do you get over that mentality? I know we're kind of veering a little bit off of the bones, but just, how do you coach people in that regard, Cory?
Well, first, because you're totally right. When you hear of selling, you think of like getting the used car that had 100,000 miles wound back off it, because you're doing integrity selling.
Yeah. That's
when you're selling, it's you're overpromising and you're under delivering. That is the usual thought of, okay, this car is not going to be as good as what I'm getting told. But if you're being integral about what you're selling, that, hey, Dr. Jones did do 5 extra studies for implants, and he is certified as an Implant Pathways member. And this is how we take care of patients. Or, hey, how are you taking COVID precautions? And walking them through, we are getting our office disinfected every night. We are using PPE. We are not allowing patients to come into the practice as a waiting room. We're doing a virtual waiting room. But if you walk them through truthfully what you're doing and you're sincere about it, I don't believe you're selling, but you're telling them and then allowing them to make a decision. But if you are the best option and you really believe that selling is not just selling, but you're really believing in what you're doing. And so it's not this untruthful thing, but it's, hey, we really believe we are the best. We're going to take care of you as best as we can. And there's 1,000 people who feel the same way. And we'd love to get you in to prove that. When you really believe what you're doing, and I believe dentists are in that vertical, it's not as much selling, but telling and inviting people to get in.
Yeah, I love that. And that was a big thing, for me to understand too. So years ago, I had a photography business and I'd shoot events and weddings and things like that. And I remember so many times where people would come up to me after their wedding, and maybe I didn't shoot their wedding, for example, but they'd come up to me afterwards and be like, the biggest regret I have is not coming to you for photography. I don't tell you how many people told me that, and it allowed me to see, hey, and actually really deep down, I felt bad about it, because I felt like, well, man, I should have done a better job of trying to convince them or encourage them to go with me, because I knew I did a good job, and I think that's exactly what you're saying, is where once you realize and recognize the value that you're providing, and also that if they go somewhere else, they're not likely going to get that same level of experience or that same level of service or care. And then it is incumbent upon you. I mean, it really becomes a moral obligation, I feel like, to do all that you can to help them see the two differences, and how you want to present that is up to you. But I think it becomes a lot easier in that circumstance or in that context to help them along, to invite them to follow your recommended, course of action.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So that's it. But I know that's a sticky point for a lot of people. So once you understand that, really, when you have the patient's interest at heart and you're really just trying to help them understand, okay, this is the likely outcome if you follow the treatment plan, or here's the likely outcome if you don't, or possibly go somewhere else, and just help them see those two options. That's kind of one way I like to look at it as well. But these are great. So just to recap, so 1 is you broke it down into greeting and first impression. 2, uncovering and building relationship. 3 is the integrity selling, a keyword, the operative word, integrity under that underline. And then 4 is finally convert and reassure, which is always an important one too, because you can do all steps 1 through 3, but if you don't make that invitation to then come in for the appointment, then all is lost. Some people, they do a great job up to that point, and then they freak out, or they get panicked or whatever, and they fail to ask,
Oh yeah.
Oh man. I see that not just dental, but in all over life. So, well, cool. That is awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Cory. So last kind of section here, let's talk about how to increasing call, answering effectiveness too. I know this is a big part that you have a lot of experience on. So how does a practice increase their phone answering effectiveness?
Yep. I mean, there's 2 parts, and it really depends what we want to talk about here, because there's the inbound phone answering that we need to answer the practice's phone, and then there's the outbound answering of our calls. So which one would you like to start off with?
Ooh, let's start off with let's start off inbound.
Okay. So the real important thing to know here is that 32% of all phone calls during the day to a dental practice are missed.
Wow.
Now, there is periods where that's really common. So the 8 to 9:30 in the morning, as practices are starting to open up, that they're having their morning huddle, that they're checking in their first patient, they're calling back voicemails from the night before. And so people miss calls there. They miss calls from 11 to 12 or 11 to 1, as people go to lunch. And what's interesting is dental is a little broken here because people call when they have time, and most people are working 8 to 5 or 9 to 5.
Right.
Dental practices are open 9 to 5 too.
Right.
And so it can be hard to reach practices because you're off for lunch, but then the practice is also off for lunch, or
Right.
you're driving to work in the morning and the practice is driving to work in the morning.
Yeah.
And so we need to make sure that we are a patient-first practice, I believe. And so if that is having a team member in 30 minutes earlier, you're going to create the reputation as the practice who always answers their phones. And that
huge.
when I break my tooth off, as I did 2 years ago, and you're in a panic, oh, if I call my practice, they will always answer.
That's huge.
And so it's important to audit your phone logs and actually look at when are we missing calls? Because yes, that's the standard of when people are missing calls, but when are we missing calls? And how can we create systems where we can avoid that?
I love that. How many practices will do this on their own, do you think, to actually look at and audit their phone logs?
Probably not many, but we're hoping for it.
Yeah. But that is that's an easy thing that you can do, though. I mean, you just make that part of your regular reporting, your weekly to-do task list responsibilities. And you just log those as the day progresses and I missed a call. Let me enter it in here, or just take 20 minutes every other day to do that. That's super easy to look at.
No, it's very simple, and it's key to growing your practice because most new patients are going to call or they're going to book online through a local med. And so make yourself available or they will call the next practice. Wow. Now, in terms of outbound call answering, this is very interesting as well, that you should be calling from about 4:30 to 7:30 p.m. And the reason that this is important is people are actually home and people actually have time to schedule. But if you call me in the middle of the day, there's a high likelihood that I'm either talking to someone or in a meeting.
Right.
And that I will not be able to get to your phone call, nor will I probably return your phone call because by the time I'm driving home, the last thing I'm thinking about is the call that I missed at 10:30 in the morning.
Right.
And so when you call during that time, people are available and people have the time to schedule. And people actually remember this amazing patient experience that the practice was open at 6:30 at night and calling and scheduling people.
Yeah. I know that's a key thing to remember that you've touched on a couple of these topics is got to put yourself in their shoes, and think, where, if I'm getting a call in the middle of the day, is that likely that I'm going to pick up, or why aren't people answering when I call when I'm off? It's really focused around the patient because we live our lives as the hero of our own story. We don't really, always think about, well, I should do it this way because that's the way this practice does it. But we think about, well, why don't they do it in my way? Because like I said, you think about it from your own point of view. So I love that.
Think about Amazon. Like 5 years ago, if someone said you could order anything and have it by tomorrow morning, people would have said, well, that's impossible. It just doesn't make sense. From a business standpoint, it's really sophisticated to pull off.
Right.
But that is because Amazon, and I really look up to Amazon personally because they built a client-centric. Jeff Bezos has always said, like, I don't look at what our competitor's doing as what our next move is. I look at what the customer wants as our next move.
Yeah.
And because of that, they built this one-day shipping, and they've built a infrastructure of client-first or patient-first care. And so if we start saying at the end of the day, what does a perfect patient experience look like? Let's start creating that. And let's look at the difference that people look into us with.
I love that. I love that, because too often, we fall into the trap of, hey, what is the competitor down the road doing? I'm just going to take that and try and improve slightly on that, and it'll increase my chances. But what you're saying is, hey, look at what the patient really needs, and that should be the direction that you should go. I mean, that should be providing all the intel that you need to move forward in a really progressive light. I think that's awesome. So you mentioned, so outbound calls should generally come from, majority of calls should go between 4:30, 7:30 at night. What else would you recommend besides just, let's schedule those? What else would you say?
Yeah, I think when you're making outbound calls that you need to be effective, that if you learned someone has passed away or had a bad experience or has moved, that you need to mark this in your practice management software. So when a team member or yourself goes back to call the next week, that you're not going to be calling the same people that you've received information about. Because you need to be archiving, inactivating, or leaving the proper comm log notes so that someone knows, okay, we should not be calling Mark because he's recently moved to Washington, D.C.
Right. Because I was elected. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
Perfect time for that comment.
I know, right? Oh, that would be the end of the world as we know it, I think.
The last thing I'd ever want to be as a politician, I'll tell you that.
I hear you. Well, and one thing too, as we were going through this, I thought, well, calls are so cool because they allow you to really set the stage. And we've mentioned that before, but setting, this is a big deal to me, as I've studied marketing and I've looked at those businesses that have done extremely well. It's because their ability to set expectations with their clients or customers, and the same should be said about your practice as well, where you're setting an expectation of what they're going to experience when they come in. I always share this example about McDonald's. The reason they've grown how they've grown and are this huge international company is not because they have the world's best hamburger. I think almost everyone would agree that they do not have the world's best hamburger, but what they do provide is a very consistent experience every single time. They've even got it down to where there's markings on the inside of the cup so they know how much ice to fill in. So like you can plug in anyone and they will just follow the manual and deliver that consistent experience, whether you're in Sydney, Australia, or whether you're in San Antonio. Like it's going to be the same experience, and that's what people really deep down want. They want to know what they can expect when they come into your office. So I love that the phone offers that ability to do that, as well as the other forms of communication, but I think it can get reinforced very easily and probably more effectively on the phone. So
that was an awesome story. I really liked it.
Yeah. Any other comments you'd say on that, increasing your answering effectiveness from an outbound point of view?
Making sure, and this is a very simple thing, that sometimes practices have multiple phone numbers, that you need to make sure that the phone call or the phone number that you're dialing out from is the phone number that's on your website or the phone number on your Google listing. And it makes like almost, is it really that big of a difference? We noticed that when you call during these hours, you're going to get about a 30% answer rate from your practice's phone number.
Interesting.
If you call from a related area code, but not the same number, your answer rate cuts in half.
Wow. That's huge.
And so it's the little things, and most practices are probably not set up that way. Also making sure that you print off a overdue patient list and that you work through it in a methodical manner. I would recommend calling from when a patient's overdue all the way till they're 36 months or more overdue. Oh. And most practices are only going about 18 months back. But when you are 18 months to 36 months overdue, yes, you are harder to convert.
Wow.
Statistically. But if you have not been seeing a dentist, the amount of treatment that you need is going to be significantly higher, where it balances itself out. You're going to convert less, but the impact of what you're doing in patient experience and patient care, and also the dollar value of treatment that you do, will be significantly higher.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I know. And I know a lot of practices that are only, well, there are some that don't do hardly any recall. And then some, that only go up to 12 months, maybe 18 months at the most. But so you're saying up all the way up to 3 months because of the potential, because they're missing out on treatment for that long. The likelihood that they're going to need additional treatment is very high.
Yep. And there's just a lot of people who have not seen the dentist for 24 months
or
27 months.
Yeah, we know those people, they just won't come in unless it's kind of last resort. But I think some of those will be converted over, if you have the chance to engage them in a conversation and you can share with them some compelling reasons to come in. Who knows, and that's the cool thing about it. And when done properly, it's just going to leave a good impression on the patient.
Because then when they do have that emergency 3 months down the line, they remember the last place that reached out to them.
Yeah. Excellent point. Awesome. Well, Cory, this has been tremendous. Any last comments? That you would add to this? I know we've dived into a lot of different things, but anything else that you would add to this?
No, I think we really touched it. If anything that I see that makes successful practices, successful DSOs, it is a patient-centric belief.
Mm-hmm.
And it is building systems that differentiate yourself from not other practices, but differentiate yourselves among the patients.
Yes, absolutely. And that's kind of where we're going. Like you mentioned Amazon and just how personalized that is now and how they've got that down to, the recommendations and all the things that they offer in addition to just the, overnight shipping or whatever it is, but just, it's incredible. They're continually innovating and really trying to make that their whole selling experience extraordinary, where they're under promising and over delivering, which is, like you said, most people do the opposite, and it leaves the customer or the patient feeling a little, that bad taste in their mouth. But when you do the opposite, it turns them into a raving fan, where they can't stop talking about you because they're just so amazed that you would, they said they were going to do this, and then they went way above and beyond, and I just can't believe it. It's just such a cool principle. So last, Cory, what if people are interested in getting in touch with you or learning more about CallForce? How do they do that?
Yeah. So people can go to getcallforce.com. That's GETCALLFORCE.com. That's our website. Obviously, it has some very broad, basic information. If you want to learn more about what we do, request a demo there, and a member of our team can reach out. And then if anyone has questions, my email is Cory, CORY, @getcallforce.com. And I am more than happy. It's my favorite thing of answering questions and interacting with practices so that we can make the dental community better for everyone.
Awesome. That is so great. Okay, we'll put that up in the show notes. And I think too that you guys have a download as well that people can grab. David sent it over to me, but it's the Guide to Answering Dental Calls.
Yep.
It's a great resource. I've been through it a couple of times, and it has some really, really practical tips that you can take that are easy to do. And just some of the things we've talked about today, but some additional insights as well. So I'll put a link up there on the notes today and under this episode as well for people to just log in or click on that so they can download it.
That's awesome.
Cool. Hopefully by then we'll have ironed out everything, with this Corona gap. All the practices will be humming and hawing. They'll just be running smoothly again. And but if not, we'll address it again.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark.
Hey, you bet. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Did you enjoy this episode of the Dental Marketing Secrets Podcast? Head on over to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. And for more proven marketing strategies to grow your practice, visit practicerocket.net.